pastors or therapy or both?
So for all of you who don't speak fluid Australian, when my wife says pasta, she means pastor.
Pastor.
Let me just break this down for you and every other Australian.
I think you can answer this one. Just got engaged to someone who is a sex addict. How do I navigate it?
Okay, a couple quick things. One,
What do y'all do for fun?
what do we not do for fun? If you are in love and building a relationship with a significant person, almost everything is fun.
Right.
If you're in a relationship with someone you don't like or don't love, almost nothing is fun.
Yes. And how long did it take for Carl to change some of his unhealthy habits?
Why does no one ask about your unhealthy habits?
Because I'm so awesome.
Nobody's ever like, Carl, what's it like dealing with her? And I'm sick of it. Easy answer for anybody is how long did it take you, whoever you are, to change your habits?
Yeah.
That gives you a great baseline. So the habits that I had created took roughly 40 years to build. So to unwind those habits is still a process and might even be a process till the day I die. Is Hillsong Church a cult? The question is tossed to us a lot. Okay, so let's answer this a few ways. It's a great one to end on. We want to do a Q&A session frequently because I feel like it's sometimes can be the key to unlocking things in people. I think we need more places to ask good questions. And so we put that out for people to send questions in, and we got thousands and thousands of questions. We're going to make it a staple of what this is. And what we discovered before we get into some of the questions is that a lot of the questions had a theme about triggers. And obviously dealing with marital things and infidelity, and it's often used in that realm, but triggers affect all of us.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth it to just talk about how you and I have tried to battle and overcome some of those triggers. I think here's the truth about triggers that I was taught, that you were taught. So other people have different views, but here, the truth about triggers that we were taught is that triggers reveal areas that have yet to heal. And that's a different level of revelation. It's a different level of ownership, because sometimes when you start talking about triggers, the focus is on the person doing the triggering, and it enables people to continue to have these triggers. So what we found out is for something to trigger you, it means there's something in you that's available to be triggered. It's very convicting, because you can either live with all the stuff that triggers you, or you can work really hard to heal something inside of you so that nobody can trigger you. No thing can trigger you. And I think that's kind of the hope, that the place that everybody would want to get to, because if there's no wound, there's no trigger. So could it be that there is a life available for us that's, without certain things and even harsh, hard, bad memories triggering us? Yeah, I think there is. And I'll give you it might be cold water to your face. It was for me when I heard it, but here's the problem with permanent acceptance of triggers, because we know people that have just accepted their life of triggers. Like they are well versed in it. That's a trigger. That's a trigger. Can't do that. That's a trigger. That triggers me. That triggers me. You trigger me. It's like, cool. Like you have identified.
Yeah.
With that trigger. But here's the truth of it. If you are content with your triggers, it means whatever is triggering you still has power over you. I did not want to accept that.
Yeah.
You did not want to accept that.
No.
And I think that to me was the thing that kind of shifted my perspective, because I was like, if that's true, and I believe it is, for me to be triggered by you means that you still have too much real estate in my mind that you have not paid for. So I don't want you to have that power. That means I need to heal what it is that you still apparently can click or push in me that makes me feel how I don't want to feel. And I think there's hope for a lot of people to get to a place where that isn't the thing that dominates your life, because you lose good people. You will cut off the wrong people. I'll give you a perfect example of a trigger that I used to have that was pretty heavy because of what I went through, especially friendship-wise. If I have a friend and they don't get back to me in a time that I feel like is suitable, it used to trigger me. And I would panic, I would get anxious, I would get angry, I'd get confrontive. And it would happen a bunch till I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? The issue is not this person's delay. Because I would love to put it on them. Like, why would? The issue is that I am scared.
Please forgive me for interrupting. Hector Guerrero, producer for The Lights On Show. I want to encourage you all. First off, this episode's amazing. Second, we have a new tiered system for the B-Side app. As you know, this is an app where you can go pay to subscribe to support everything we're doing and to really dive deeper into your growth, being committed and walking into discipleship, mentorship, coaching, vulnerability, all of the things all in one place. The best part is we have actively been working for a tiered system so that we can implement a system for if you have a household and you want up to 6 people to have this app, we can do that now. There's another tier system where if you want to give more and just to be generous because you feel like the content has blessed your life, you can do that as well. So go to the website, go to the app, check out the pricing page. It's in the description below. And listen, we got this content on YouTube. It's a blessing. And there's so much more on the app. And to all of our paid subs, you guys get to know first about our live events. And we have a lot of live podcast show events coming up. Carl just did one with Tim and Preston Morrison. It was insane. So don't want you to miss out on that. I love you guys so much. You are amazing. Go subscribe right now. Enjoy the rest of the show. Peace.
I'm scared of losing people. What is that? Let me fix that. Okay, boom. You start doing the work, all of a sudden the same thing that used to trigger you, now it's like, I prefer it. Yeah, if you got back to me in a timely fashion, but it's not going to send me into a day of anxiety and spiraling and whatever. So now I have friendships that are pretty awesome, casual, cool, clear. But should something like that happen, it's not going to trigger me because I did the work. I don't want to be friends with somebody that's constantly triggered by everything I do. And so I have people in my life like that, and I'm like, I got to put my boundaries up because you don't want to do the work to fix that. So me and you can't go to a high school football game because it triggers you. I get that. Okay, well, I'm going to go. So that's what I do on Friday nights. As an example, I don't want to live a life that is completely hindered because of my triggers.
Yeah.
Does that sound right to you? Does it sound accurate?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think there are some triggers that I don't think will ever go away. So like the fact of like if something comes up about, watching something and there's like an affair or whatever, that's obviously going to get me. But I'm not sitting in it and it doesn't make me like spiral all the way down or like freak out and like I can't watch. Well, there are some things that I do switch off if I just choose not to go there. But in terms of like everyday triggers, like I have had to and I've wanted to face those. And because I just didn't want to, I didn't want that to have control over my life. And I think there's a scripture that talks about, renewing your mind and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's kind of along those lines.
Yeah, it is.
What a trigger is like you can either choose to just accept that, every time you see that or every time you have to go there, it's going to trigger you, or you can like be
reframe
like,
that thing.
Yeah, why would I want to live like that? And I mean, a perfect example for me would be New York. Like we've had to go to New York a few times since we left. I know some people that have had some traumatic things happen in New York or wherever and they've never gone back since. Right. And I just was like, I don't want that to be my story. So I had to reframe it and I had to change how I saw New York, or like walking down a street or walking wherever. I'm like, okay, I can create new memories or I can face that. So I've definitely worked hard at diminishing some of the triggers that I could easily sit in and let rule my mind.
You work hard though, babe. You work hard. And I think that's the thing that gets missed. And I think New York is a perfect example. You said it beautifully. The last time I was in New York, I actually called you with a smile on my face because I was like, this is like, we do work hard. We try to get better a lot. And I'm like, I'm in New York and this place should be a metropolis of triggers. Everything. I mean, in the first time we went back, I was so nauseous for the days we were there. I was like, I will never go back to that city again. And I just couldn't handle it. Like everything just made me feel physically ill. Heavy trigger. And through the work we've done, you put yourself back in some old positions and you're like, this city's not going to, my bad memories and the pain that happened to me and the pain that I caused others. And like, that's not going to be the determining factor. There's hope for people. And so we're going to miss out on New York City.
Right.
That's what you got to ask yourself. Is your trigger that you think is protecting you, could it be costing you more than you think your protection is gaining in your life? I don't think it matches up sometimes.
No, and I just think it's just such a beautiful place to be where you can put the work in and be free of that stuff. Like, I don't understand why you would want to keep focusing on that as like not a positive, but just making that the main focus. So
it's too hard. It's too hard to work through it.
It's so hard. It's so hard. It's exhausting.
And there's people who will surround you and be like, cool, let's have a trigger party. Let's have all of us who are triggered. Let's get together. Let's be in our own little club of people that are triggered. And I just want no parts of stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I'll throw out 3, maybe 4 quick things that we use to overcome a trigger tendency, which is a tendency to let triggers determine your entire trajectory. Because there are some triggers you're going to have to learn how to accept, build boundaries around, and work through. That's a reality. The key is to not just live in it. So the first thing we always talk about is identify what the trigger is, because it's probably deeper than what you think. So the lowest level of trigger identification is going, that thing triggers me. Planes trigger me. There's a deeper issue. You doing that triggers me. No, what's the actual issue? That's where you start to work. And that's where the power is. So if you can identify what it is, and we've been through, let's take church as a perfect example for you and I. So we had to identify, for a while, you have to deal with the trigger as you will. And that means not going
avoiding it.
That's okay. There's a healthy part of recovery of any sort of trauma that's just going to be a reality. But we were like, do we want the collateral damage to be we never connect with church again? No. So we need to work on this because the issue is not church. There was at least a year and a half where very hard for us to go, very hard for us to function. I want to know parts of it. And then I realized my issue is not with church. So all the people who talk frequently about church hurt, I'm going, okay, you can say that. I'm not going to fight you on that. I would just add, I think it's people hurt.
Right.
A church building has never hurt anybody in its life. The people inside do. So for me and you, who have been on so many different parts of that coin, it's like, okay, let me think about this. I don't want the rest of my life to drive by every church I see and shake my head and think about it for 4 minutes and ruminate on negative thoughts. Let me heal the wound. What's the real wound? Why does church trigger me? Because it makes me feel sad. It makes me feel let down by God. It reminds me that I feel like at times I let down people, and it makes me feel abandoned again because last time I was a part of a church, it went really bad at the end and it hurt me. That's the issue. Church is beautiful. It's filled with people that are trying to get better, and if you keep it where it shouldn't be an issue. But I decided to make the choice. I don't want to live a life where church is a no-go for me. Right. No, that guy over there, he doesn't do church. Don't even talk about it because it'll trigger Carl. Don't even play a Hillsong song. And there was a season where if I heard a Hillsong song, I would rip it out and throw it into the road. But I love Hillsong music. I don't want to not be able to listen to music that I grew up on because it triggers me. I'm robbing myself. So what is it about Hillsong music that triggers me? Well, it makes me feel sad again. So I know the wound. What am I sad about? Oh, I'm sad about this and that. So let me heal that. All of a sudden, I can listen to a song again. Yeah. So I think identifying what the real thing is can set you free. And it's a beautiful moment. I would say the second thing would be, before I even go there, you can't misidentify the trigger because that becomes a thing. So if you get the wrong label on a trigger, now you're going to rob yourself of something that had nothing to do with it. For instance, we were in the car, and I could feel you looking at me funny. And I looked at you and I was like, are you mad at me? And you're like, yes, I'm mad. I'm like, babe, I'm not trying to split hairs here, but I haven't said a word. All I've done is breathe. Is my breathing making you mad? Yes, it is. Your breathing's irritating me. I'm like, I want to comply, but I'm not sure I can get down with no breathing. I don't know if I can make it through the car ride. What's really going on? You're like, I don't know. And I'm like, because all I did was sit down. I feel like I have a pleasant spirit. I'm chilling in the shotgun, and you're triggered. So what are you triggered about? And then we dug into it. And the real issue for you is that when I'm quiet, it would trigger you to remember times where I was lying to you and hiding in my head and not being honest. And so we had to work on the root so that I could be quiet. Otherwise, I would be doing stuff out of overcompensatory feelings to make sure you don't feel a certain way. But we had to get to the issue. So the issue was not me sitting there being quiet. Like, I hate it when you're quiet. You don't hate it when I'm quiet. You hate it when I lie.
Yeah.
You hate it when I'm not honest. And there's serious damage that's been done because I did lie and because I wasn't honest. So I have to be, number one, open to you sometimes being human, having that trigger, but you're easy to love because you don't want to stay there. And there have been a lot of instances like that. We've been able to identify the real trigger. And so for anybody watching, go look at your triggers, write down what you think they are, and then ask yourself, what might it be other than this as well? That's where you're going to find your sweet spot right there. That's where you're going to find answers.
I think a lot of people use them, though, as excuses.
Oh, of course they do.
Which is, like, that's fine if you want to do that.
It'll get you out of jail free. You don't have to deal with anything. I don't go, I'm triggered by that. Gotcha. All hands are up. It's like the God card. If someone sits down and said, God told me, cool, man, great meeting. Now, I don't want to mess with God. I'm triggered. You trigger me. Great.
It just shuts everyone down.
So the whole world gets to revolve around me and my triggers. I got 19 things that trigger me. Nobody mess with me. I don't think anybody wants to be around a person like that.
Right.
And we identified a bunch of triggers that we had to accept and get through. Triggers were like phones.
Yeah.
For a while, that was a huge trigger. The gym, huge trigger. Mental distance, lack of eye contact, me being alone anywhere at any time. All these were triggers, but none of them were the reason.
Right.
So even the phones, for instance, there comes a day where we had to accept the fact that you could not handle me being on a phone. And we worked through that. And we got to a place through open honesty where that trigger was eliminated through trust. The gym thing's funny because we actually got a bunch of questions that we won't cover in a second here. But a lot of women have asked you, like, how do you deal with Carl going to the gym?
Yeah.
And you can answer that. But I would say, and I've said this to a few wives that we've counseled, and I say, hey, look, you can ban him from going to the gym. But you got to understand, if that man's going to cheat, he's going to cheat.
Yeah.
And the gym has really nothing to do with it. Like, are women dressed differently? Yeah, but it doesn't matter for someone who has malicious intent. It's not going to be the setting that gets them. They've already made their call. So with the gym, there was a time where I went for 20 minutes or less, and you knew where I was, and we worked through it. But you never settled in that. It was never like, never the gym for you. It was like, I don't feel safe right now with these 5 things. And when you go to the gym, I have a panic attack. Cool. You know what? That triggers you right now. We're going to take our time. I'll work out at home. No big deal. And we work through it. And I think that's where some of the beauty lies in this exercise is going. We can't just write off whole genres of life.
Well, it's also a reflection, I think, of insecurity as well. So like the gym thing for me, I remember the first time we walked into a gym.
Remember that too.
Remember that in Florida?
And your face turned white. Yeah.
And we just went to work out. I'd never been in that gym. Like, we just moved, and I literally started crying in the gym, and we had to walk out. And it was just a thing that I had to face.
I was like, babe, this isn't a CrossFit gym. I'm not about to put you through hell.
Yeah, it was just such a weird feeling, but it was a trigger for me. And it was just the fact that I felt insecure. I felt like I'm looking at all these other amazingly, like, beautiful women or, like, fit people, and I'm here with you. And it just, like, took me into this, like, spiral of just feelings. And I was like, okay, I need to deal with that. And I literally didn't go back to the gym for like 6 months. It is what it is. But I was like, I just had to figure that out. But there's time. And I do think that some of those triggers can be healed by time and all of that. But actually identifying it for me was really helpful. Yeah. So the gym thing was massive.
It's big.
And again,
it's what it represented.
It represented women are everywhere, right?
Or like represented me intentionally in a place without you, without accountability, without an ability to know. There was a season where I think it's important to say that I don't get to decide when you're ready to move on from your trigger. You have to. And because you do so such a great job of that. I know it would probably be frustrating if that continued forever.
Stupid.
I cannot decide when it's time for Laura to move on from that trigger.
Yeah.
And we had some combos that were real about that. Like, hey, traveling was a thing.
Traveling was massive.
But traveling represented so much. So it would be easy to say, travel triggers me, Carl can't travel. We were honest. It's not necessarily the travel, it's the lack of trust and the lack of equity that you have with me, not the travel. Build those, and so much has been freer in our life because we've built through the real issues. So some stuff we had to talk about and didactically plan, we don't have to do that anymore because we've actually worked on some of the issues. And then there are some things that are still triggering to me today, and I accept that. And I'm willing, and my desire is to work through them. So this isn't. I don't think I'll ever live a trigger-free life because there's no hope of being completely healed until heaven. So this exercise is huge for people because you don't have to have a trigger-dominated life. But so those are some of the ones that we had to work on. But honesty is everything. Number 2, I would say work on the wound. Identify what the real issue is. And the second thing, if you are someone struggling, you actually have to work on the wound, which we just talked about, which is just sticking to the plan that you have to heal yourself. Like, so for me, I had to stick to the plan. I've identified the triggers, not church. The trigger is I feel like God left me and I left God and I have these deep spiritual issues, and let me work on the issue. And eventually the thing that used to trigger you will no longer be the object of your disdain or ire because you've actually hit what really matters.
Yep.
And we have a plan that we stick to. And then thirdly, this is a big one, remind yourself of who you are now. Might help to get a mantra or a reframe mechanism. So I've identified what the real trigger is and I'm working on the wound. And then as I grow, when I'm in that spot where I'm hit with that trigger, what do? I remind myself, I grew through this. So I'm in New York City, and I'm starting to feel a little bit anxious, and I remind myself, my personal reframe mantra, if you will, is I say this sometimes thousands of times a day. I'm healthy, I'm healing, and I'm hopeful. I'm healthy, I'm healing, and I'm hopeful. What would the healthy, healing, hopeful Carl do right now? Boom. And I crush it.
Yeah.
Because I remind myself that's not like the scared, broken, tired, can't handle that. But the moment I remind myself, I'm no longer there anymore. And you've done that before. I've seen you do it in real time. I've seen you talk out loud to yourself, like, I'm good. We're doing this. This isn't going to be a trigger for me. Let's go. And to your credit, it just takes a lot of bravery to do that. But I think...
And it doesn't mean like ignoring or
Ever.
like what's the word? Like trying to just block it out, deny that feeling or that thought. It's actually saying, yes, this is what happened, or this is the thing that I'm triggered by. But the truth is now, here is where we are. Like this is, so kind of saying like, yes, I understand and I see that this was a trigger, but also, and this is true,
Yeah.
So I think that's super important.
I think we got to do a better job of learning how to function and react to things that are triggering. It's even more complex if you're a Christian. And Christians sometimes we can be the softest. And it's like, if you claim to be a follower of Jesus, which we both do, we're supposed to forgive quickly, as God would. We're supposed to not carry offense. We're supposed to be able to give people grace. These all rage against our propensity to want to sit in a triggered victim mentality. So that's something everybody's got to reckon with. Like, if you're a Christian and you're constantly triggered by people and things, I think there's more for you. I think that there's a more peaceful life to be had. So, I hope that helps. I think that it's important, Leslie, when you've been talking to wives, we both can sense that there are times where a husband who has made mistakes can be demanding about timeframes when it comes to triggers.
Yeah.
So let me just make it real clear. If you are the person that has brought the trauma into the situation, you will not be the director of how that situation moves into a more peaceful place. So for instance, with the gym, I wasn't sitting there going, hey, come on, man, this is work on your wound, babe. Didn't you hear that podcast?
Right.
Work on the wound and identify what it is. I need to go do this. No, it's like at the end of the day, I caused you to feel like you feel. So I will be here and I will do something different. I can find something different. There was another instance, I forget what it was, but you had a random thing one time. You're like, hey, I just don't want you to do that. I don't really know why right now, but I'm just not comfortable. And I went, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's not, I don't have the right now to challenge that. We can work on it. If it were to become a theme, I'd have to sit down and say, hey, what's the real issue here? Because it wasn't, I don't think it was the actual thing. There's something else going on. So I just want a huge shout out to the husbands that are trying to work their way back into a place of trust. Release. It's the best way as a recovering husband, the best word, the two words that I never thought I would live in, release and accept. These are curse words to a driver, somebody wants to make it happen. So release that desire, accept this reality, learn how to find the peace in the middle of it, and watch this person grow. If there comes a time when that person just refuses to move forward, yeah, let's talk.
Yeah.
We got to get a third person in there. But what would happen is if you gave more compassion to the person who's dealing with the triggers, and as long as they show up to work, I got all day, and you were so busy working, it's like, babe, the last thing you need to worry about is this. I got you. I'll just do something different. And it's been our rhythm. So at all the questions we got, that was the biggest theme.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we hit it. And let's go. We'll go straight into some other hot topics and see where it lands. I think what we've loved about this pod is the ability to connect with people and try to find out exactly where they're at, exactly what matters. And
we put out a thing. Yeah, I put out a
couple of days
ago Q&A on Insta just to see if there was anything interesting. Got a bunch. So did you.
Yeah.
So we kind of went through those and picked some spicy ones and some good ones.
And what you find is themes. And I've always thought that's true about whether it's therapy, whether it's church or whatever. Like sometimes you feel like you're so alone. And then you find out other people have the exact same issues or challenges or questions or at least a theme. So we definitely have picked a couple. So what we're going to do with Lights On moving forward is we're always going to try to spend at least an episode pretty regularly just answering people's questions. So we will have an email because some people said, hey, can you put an email up? So
because they've got longer questions.
If you haven't subscribed to this pod yet, do that. And then on there will be a place to send questions, and it's awesome. It's a highlight, and we've never ever been like, this is the pod to get your answers. This is the pod to get our perspective on a lot of things that sometimes are heavy, other things that are pretty normal.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love the format. So we'll just throw a couple of these out there, and then and we'll see where it goes. So all of you who submitted questions, there was a ton. Thank you. We appreciate it. And even if we don't get to it, we'll get to it. We'll just keep a running log and go from there. And do you have any questions for me, love? How's my Dad of the Year ranking going?
It's not bad.
Okay.
You're crushing it right now.
No competition in my house, but I still want to get first place.
Well, that's true. But having the girls away at college.
Yeah, we're almost empty nesters. So we've got two
one,
out.
One left.
Okay.
It's great.
We feel pretty good. It's good to be here. It's good to be with you.
Did you want me to start?
I'll go. First question.
Okay, go.
Did Carl only confess to you because he got caught?
Ooh, juicy.
This is an interesting question because I feel like you see it as a question and you also see it thrown as an insult.
Yeah, I see it on your...
Once in a while, you see someone say, oh, you only get honest because you only honest because you got caught. And the real answer is probably both. Yes and no and who cares? That's my favorite answer. Like I feel like when you get to a spot that is one of exposure, you got to figure out what you're going to do and who you're going to be. So would I have been honest if I didn't get caught? Well, the easy answer is no, because I wouldn't have been in the situation. And then the way I look at it is this: it's a framing issue. So you were honest because you got caught. That's a fair thing for someone to say. Here's another way to say it. God gave me an opportunity to change my life.
Right.
I took it, and I chose to be honest. So I don't even think like that. Like people are like, would you have been honest if you didn't get caught? I'm like, sorry, man, I don't know how to go into a time machine and hypothetically get in my old ex mind. But I also think sometimes people can get hung up on that. We've talked to couples that get hung up on that too. Like, if I didn't catch him, he wouldn't have been honest. And there might be validity to that. My question is, what's he doing with it once he got caught?
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of sit with a question like that. And I think if someone out there is wondering how to gauge somebody who's trying to be honest after they've got caught, it's got to be a day-by-day, case-by-case moment. And yeah, it's way better to be honest without getting caught. No argument ever. It's not my story. My story is God gave me an opportunity to get healthy, to get healed, to get honest, to make things right, and I took it. You never once have said that to me, though, ever. So I find that interesting. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, that's how it is with a lot of things in people's lives. Like, we all have things that we hide or secrets, and you can choose to come forth with it, or you can get caught or like be found out in a lie or whatever. You have the opportunity to change.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same thing, and exactly right. God created that moment, and you had a choice, and you chose pretty well, I think.
Thank you, love. Also, I could have kept lying.
Yeah, exactly.
That's often what I tell when someone else asks me that, like, would you? I'm like, I could have continued on that road, and a lot of people do that. They get caught, and they either bide their time, they try to save face or public image, they do as much as they can to not lose everything, and then move on. We just took a different route, which was I was relieved, in a weird, unhealthy way of just going, maybe this can be it for me. So, yeah, that's the answer to that question. Hopefully that helps. It's a matter of framing. So for anybody asking, it just depends on how you look at it. You want to do the second one?
Yeah. What are some communication tools that you keep close?
That keep us close.
Oh, that keep us close.
Yeah, communication tools that keep us close. We yell. We yell directly in each other's faces. You first, I'll go second.
Communication. I think it's the tools that we use. It's probably just taking like time to actually sit and communicate with each other. And if there is, things we usually take every day, there's a moment in our day where we can be like, hey, how are you feeling today? Or what's going on with your brain or whatever it is. I can tell something's on your mind. What is it? So it's just being aware of the other person and not avoiding. I think it's really easy when you're married to avoid or like, I don't feel like confronting that, or I think we've just chosen to take things head on because of where we've come from. It's like, why not? Like, let's talk about what's happening. Let's talk about that we've had a shitty day, or let's talk about that I'm mad at you today, or whatever it is. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, you use the word tools. I think what you hear often is, man, we don't have the time. One of our tools is intentionality.
Yeah.
So what keeps us the closest is eye-to-eye contact and just a constant check-in. So I think when you lose that, and we feel off of rhythm if it's been a day or two. So
absolutely.
We have a really good habit. Like, one of the things that keeps us close is when it's about 6 o'clock, unless I'm taking Roman to one of his 19 activities. And hey, how are you? How do you feel? What are you thinking? Where's your head at? And you ask me the same thing, and that's our number one bridge. And then we try not to end it.
Yeah.
It's not like that's the only time we do it. I mean, I guess it would be similar to a prayer life, hopefully. The only time you ever pray is by yourself in your prayer closet and never moving and talking. And, I think that it lessens the impact. So for us, we just try to stay connected constantly. But that's a huge, so for all the guys out there, for any husbands listening, one of the tools I use is, what can I do to make you feel safer? That's probably my favorite question. And that question always changes your nervous system. I can see it in your face. I can see it in your body. And I would invite anybody, any husband, that's trying to just, or wife just connect. For that matter. I think wives can do it too. I can't speak to them, but I think that's what I use that gives me the most fruit. How can I make you feel safe? Because it takes your brain to a place that is like exact. And you're like, huh. And then you're able to say, where do I not feel safe? So that question's awesome. What other tools do we have? We lock our doors sometimes and tell our kids, don't come knocking this way. Under any circumstances, I don't care if you're on fire, and I don't care if you're getting arrested. this door is locked so we can have adult conversations as well. So, because there's a difference between having a heart-to-heart at the kitchen table with everybody around,
that's true.
and different just getting, time alone. So we've got really good with that.
Yeah.
Any other tools that you love about our communication?
Can't think of any.
We don't text arguments,
Oh, no. I mean, we did that yesterday.
which we can talk about.
We can talk about.
Yeah.
But we had a
some
rough
lessons
day yesterday.
For sure.
And we did have miscommunications on our text because I thought you were coming at me.
The tone
you
was
weren't.
misread.
Yeah, and I took it a tone that was not right. So that's interesting. I think so many things can be avoided when you actually get off your phone and actually talk it out. So that took extra long because we were texting back and forth and it got a little tense.
Yeah.
And we should have just had that conversation in person.
Yeah, and we're really
which we
good
ended
at
up
that.
doing.
Yeah, we're good at that. I think there's a lane in this generation where people are like, I'm better with texting. I disagree.
Same.
I think what it does is it gives you. There can be times when
hide
text is
behind
beautiful and you can take your time to think. But for us, if it gets even remotely disagreeable, we just are good at going. I'll talk to you in person.
Let's talk about it when we get home.
and yesterday was a great example of us using all of our tools to go, which somebody asked about conflict, we'll get there. But what keeps us close is not texting flamingly mad or accusatory or open-ended manipulative text, which so many people are in the middle of relationships like that. And
I love it when people do it and they're in their own home, they're in different rooms and they're texting each other.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
But it happens
also
all
convenient.
the time.
It doesn't count if you're playing
Not crazy,
2K
sorry, but
and you desperately need a new Diet Coke. I'm not going to get up and find you.
That.
I'm going to text that one. So
Correct.
if that's a shot,
I'm just talking about people who are having an argument in one's in the bedroom and one's out watching TV.
Probably a flag of you need to probably think about that.
Let's figure that out. But yeah.
So yeah, that's good. Those are some of our tools.
Next question.
We can go further. Go.
Oh.
No, next question.
This one, I think you can answer this one. Just got engaged to someone who is a sex addict. How do I navigate it?
Good question. Okay, a couple quick things. One, question. I am engaged to a sex addict. How should I proceed? Big deal, big win off the top is that whoever you're engaged to has been honest with you and said, this is what I deal with. So huge green flag of honesty. So that's a plus. Immediately after I say this is serious. So you do not want to get involved with someone that has had major sexual trauma, that has developed into sexual addiction, that's not actively and always working on getting themselves better. So to say, hey, I'm a sex addict, just so you know, I would love to hear the follow-up. Here's what I do to heal. Here's what I do. And I'm a guy who I don't label myself like that. I always say I'm a recovering survivor. I don't necessarily want to put myself back in the seat of saying that word. I'm a sexual addict. But if someone's saying that, it's a huge, humble admission, matters a lot. I would love to hear this man say, here's my plan. Here's my priorities. Here's my circle plan. Here are the guys that I lean on. Here are the nights I'm not available for dates because this is when I press into my healing and my growth. And so you want to ask the follow-up question. So I don't think it's a deal breaker at all. I just think it's like if you have anybody that it comes to a relationship with pre-existing conditions, you got to account for it. So technically I should have sat down with you when I was 21 and been like, hey, by the way, we didn't know.
Yeah.
But so you're already ahead of the game. Whoever asked that question, I think it's encouraging. So just ask the questions that follow up. It's not enough just to know your label. You've got to know what the label means. Well, I'm a this, I'm a that. Cool, what does that mean? Well, I'm a recovering addict. So what that means is that I live an intentional life. I live a careful life. I live a fun life, whatever. You got to figure out what's behind the label. And I think that's going to set you up. And if you hear answers that are vague, it's a huge cautionary moment to just go, you need to figure out your plan because you don't stop being an addict when you get married.
Oh, no.
In fact, just imagine a little fire and then imagine marriage being just people just dumping gas on that fire because pressure, stress, elevation of life. If you don't have some of those things taken care of, they're going to show up in living color. So yeah, that would be our encouragement to that awesome person. Shout out to that guy for being honest.
Yeah.
About being, we still live in a world where people can hide stuff like that. There's no shame. Zero.
How did your parents react when they found out, I guess both of our sets of parents? But
Very, very
mine.
important question. So let's make some assumptions. Let's assume we're talking about parents that are involved, parents that are present, parents that have some sort of relationship. Great question, because it has a huge impact on recovery in the next chapter. So I can tell you how I feel about our parents than you. Because actually, I'm interested in hearing what that was like from your angle again. I told my parents, and my parents are the best. It's unfair to have parents like I do, and they were supportive and helpful and challenging. And mainly, they just were a safe place. And they didn't judge me. They didn't, discard me. They were kind. So that really helped me. Your dad, who I called, and when I told him what happened, he listened and he was quiet and he said, I love you. He said, I love you. You're going to get through this. Thank you for telling me. And I'm with you and I'm for you. Still believe in you. Still believe in the call on your life, and you're going to get through this. And I look back on that, and I think it has something to do with my response, because it wasn't like, this is what I did. It wasn't like, at that point I had some answers. So I said, this is what I've done. I made these choices. It led to here. This is what I plan on doing to never put your daughter in this position again. And I'm sorry for breaking your trust. I'm sorry for the way I handled this chapter with your precious daughter. And your dad forgave me and never moved an inch. And your mom is the same. Your mom just hugged me and did what your mom does. She's a soothing trauma therapist walking. And so for her, it was, maybe it would have been different if my response was different. But so that's my recollection of how they reacted. What do you remember?
Yeah, same. I think your parents were very, just so kind and just sad, obviously, and devastated for me. But I appreciate it because, since then I've seen other parents, how they've handled their son, and it's been quite enabling toward the son and not supportive to the wife, which I think is a little bit upsetting, because all you want is to be supported in that moment.
Yeah.
And I don't think talking about, my son's hurting and blah, blah, blah. We get that, but they've also hurt me.
There is a victim and there is a perpetrator.
Yeah.
Period.
So I appreciate their response. The same, my parents were awesome through all of that. It was hard though, because we were on the other side of the world when it happened and it was COVID. So I couldn't see them. But I think we got real lucky with our parents.
Yeah. Huge question to ask, because a lot of times parents will get interjected into the picture very quickly. And our perspective would be, once you've made a decision as a couple, what you're going to do, people who are with it, cool. People who are not, boundary, because it's your life. So if you have let's just say if somebody would have been like, you need to leave him, this happened to you. You need to leave him. He's this, he's that. And you said, well, I'm not going to leave him. I'm choosing this. And those people were gone. And you were like, bye. I cannot have that view and that spirit into this. And if it was the other way, if you had chosen, no, I'm going to create boundaries, I'm going to leave my husband and I'm going to, do what I have to do, anybody would be trying to pull you back in equally would need to be shut down. So I think it's, when it comes to family, hugely complicated and essential that you get it right, because parents are parents. If I put myself in the shoes of a dad, of a wife that has been betrayed, Lord knows, I don't even want to think about how I would react. I would have my opinion and I would have my influence, and it would be up to the couple involved to decide what they want to listen to and the choice they want to make. So if you're being manipulated by your parents, something to take account for. Pretty dangerous and ineffective. So whoever asked that, great question. We get it a lot, which shows us that there are a lot of parents that are heavy-handed in that process, and that's a choice every couple has to make. Who's allowed to speak into this and who isn't? And once you get that number, you got to shut down. You got to shut down the show and walk out your course with some faith, and that's the way to maintain a little bit of health in some crazy moments. That's what we did. Yeah, we had a very small crew of people who are with us, who knew our plan, and it really helped us, including our parents. This is what we're going to do. This is what we need to do. This is our journey. Okay.
Yeah, it was
You,
great.
you don't have to agree with it, but if you're in here, you do. If you don't, if you don't trust me, you don't believe me, you don't want me to do this, then we've heard you out. Now you can go because we're going to go this way. So I think it's a huge moment to get to.
Pastors or therapy or both?
Okay, so for all of you who don't speak fluid Australian, when my wife says pasta, she means pastor.
Pastor.
Let me just break this down for you and every other Australian. We use R's in this country.
We
You're
do
not
not.
allowed just willy-nilly throw out an R because you don't like to pronounce it, okay? So the question was,
I can't help it.
pastors, therapy, or both?
Both, yeah.
So great question. You want to hit first? You want me to jump in there?
I mean, I have my thoughts on some of
All
some
right,
of
I'll
that.
go, and then you can gauge how
Yeah,
hard
yeah,
I
yeah,
go.
you
No,
go.
I think I said it on our podcast with Jason Jaggert. I like this equation. I like it when people have pastors, therapists, and coaches.
Mm-hmm.
You're very blessed if you can pull that off because a pastor is a shepherd, and it's one of the most vital roles God has ever created. To be without a pastor, I think, is doing yourself personally a disservice. I think it's an essential role that somebody has to have in your life. A therapist, to me, equally essential. And if you're an old school Christian, you're like, what? Well, be a new school Christian. Broaden your mind and understand that the role of a therapist is so different than the role of a pastor.
Yes.
Why people get so frustrated with churches and pastors is because they want churches and pastors to be things that they are not.
Mm-hmm.
We don't ever do this at my church. Why would you? Why would your pastor get up on a Sunday morning and get into therapy? Doesn't make
not
any
his
sense.
role.
It's not his role. And so when you put all of this on a pastor, then you have the arrogant pastors who think
That
that
they're
they do
therapists.
have the ability to do this.
Right.
They're equally as
And that's where that scares me.
misinformed. And so I think that the rub right now that we would see sometimes is pastors up there dipping into therapy stuff. And I would stay pretty far away unless you have, a lot of work and fruit to show for that. Leave that to people who do that.
Yeah.
And I think, so I love both. I think that you want to have congruency. If you have three people saying different things, that's going to create major confusion. But I think if you're living this life and all you have is a therapist, I think you could really use a pastor. If all you have is a pastor, I think you could really, really use a therapist. And if you really want to grow, feel free to go find a coach because you are not able to assess your own capability without somebody else calling it out. And that's a leadership fact. There's science to prove that the number one leadership struggle is that leaders do not know how to actively determine their own potential. So you need somebody to call that out. So that's my long worded answer.
No, I agree. I agree with all of that. I think the scary thing is when pastors use their power to manipulate people's, whatever they're going through, marriage or like job change or family stuff, and they use too much of that to give their opinion or to manipulate the situation to what they want.
Right.
And that's where it's dangerous. I think as a pastor, your role is to correct and guide
Rebuke
and
to
pray and all of that.
Yeah.
But to tell people what to do is dangerous. And I think too many think that they can do that. And because I think as sheep, we are looking for someone to lead us and guide us, but we also have those answers within us. And that's where a coach or a therapist can come in,
Beautifully said.
or even your own prayer time with God yourself. You have those answers in you. It's just dialing into it. So I think, it's beautiful if you can have all three and can afford a therapist but a lot of people can't. So I think it's really important to remember that you also have the Holy Spirit and you have those answers in you, and that comes from God. And so I think we can partner with a pastor as well and be like, hey, this is what I feel like God's telling me to do. And I think as a pastor, it's really beautiful if you can stand with someone and be there for them and support them. But telling them what to do, really, it bothers me a lot.
Yeah.
So that's
I think
just
it should.
mine.
I think that, there's a time and place to tell people what has been said.
Yeah.
And you make the decision on what to do with it. But I'll give you a real-time example. Deliverance ministry is a big deal right now. And there are some guys I like. And there's some guys I trust. There's other guys I'm going, like I heard a pastor say, you don't need to go to therapy. And they only talk like this, by the way. They only talk, you don't need to go to therapy. You need some good old-fashioned prayer because you got a demon.
Yeah, the demon.
And all these people going to tell you about this fluffy therapy. That guy saying it needs therapy, firstly.
100%.
Okay, the pastor saying it in real time needs therapy, but sometimes people don't have demons. They have trauma. They have chemical issues. They have stuff that can be very, very, very clearly worked out. And when you tell somebody that they are being supernaturally possessed, I think it's an interesting time where you're seeing a lot of this. So I think if you're a church goer, just have your head on straight and understand that the pastor, it's not his job to necessarily create this holistic beauty in you. It's his job to be a shepherd. Mm-hmm. And there's so many great ones out there.
Yeah.
Like I love where the church is headed. There's a lot of pastors who just do such a beautiful job. And the smart ones will say, I'm not your therapist. I'm not your coach. I'm your pastor. Right. This is my job. And the ones who their days are numbered are the ones who say you don't need that stuff. Why would they say that? Why would a pastor ever say to someone, I'm what you need?
Because they can control
Correct.
Them.
Because the thought of you listening to other voices in their mind threatens their control. Yep. And we've been in movements like that, where it's like, don't listen to anybody but me. Don't listen to your dad. Don't listen to me. Mm-hmm. I'm your pastor.
I'm your pastor.
And it's like, that's an interesting thing to say.
It's
why would you say that? I think there's a different way to go about it, but great question. So our answer is both and yes.
No.
Couldn't be clearer. Our answer is yes and no and both and yes.
Yeah.
And
okay, next one. What do y'all do for fun?
What do we not do for fun? We're the most fun people I know. Great question. What do we do for fun? Okay, here's a way to answer this. What do we do for fun? If you are in love and building a relationship with a significant person, almost everything is fun.
Right.
If you're in a relationship with someone you don't like or don't love, almost nothing is fun.
Yes.
So we have seen both. Like we have done fun things and been connected, and it's great. But we've done boring, mundane things and been connected. Still fun.
Yeah.
Conversely, we have done amazing things that should be fun, but have not been eye to eye or connected, and that thing's miserable. You could be on a tropical island of your dreams with everything you could ever want to do and to have fun, but if you're not content with this person that you love, it's not going to be fun. Mm-hmm. So I like to encourage people to be less mindful of the things you're doing and be more mindful of the people that you're becoming. Because we have stupid fun a lot. And we're in a special place with that. I think we just love being around each other. So it's like, let's go wash the car and let's go. A lot of our time right now is spent watching our kids do stuff. So, but I think fun for us would be dinner with good friends. That's fun.
It's my favorite.
Sitting on our porch.
Yep.
We'll leave it there about what goes on the porch because there's all kinds of controversial things. There's ping pong, there's video games. I don't want to offend anybody. A lot of sensitive people out there. But we love to sit and we love to hang with our kids.
Home, yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have like a crazy cool hobby. I've heard some couples are like, we're hikers. We hike on mountains and then we helicopter off. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. And also, where's my couch? How fast can I get there?
Yeah.
I will not hike. We just hung out with the coolest couple that we love so much, and they're hikers. Like, y'all want to go hiking? We're like, you know what? That's going to be a hard no. It's going to be a no.
I would do it.
You would do it.
I would do it, but I'm real happy to sit and just watch the sunset.
We will explore hiking because it does sound fun.
It does.
But my point is, I do side eye other active couples, and I'm like, they parasail. I did think of something that could be fun though. You know those old guys that have the street sweeping things on the beach?
The magnet, the metal detectors.
That's something you and I could get into.
100%. I know when we were in Santa Barbara dropping the girls off, I was like, oh, that would be so fun. You would find so much stuff on Santa Barbara Beach.
If anybody's watching and you are a beach comber like that, contact me. Because I think that we could find our wheelhouse.
Yeah, what's the tips and tricks?
Because imagine how, because it's like video games. So that's the reason why PUBG and some of those games are so awesome, because every time you find something new, it's a dopamine rush.
Oh,
so
yeah, it's probably
the
like
thought
that
of me
for them.
combing beaches for hours just hoping to find anything metal, now we're cooking. That sounds fun. So we'll add that. Next
Oh, my
podcast, we'll give you an
gosh.
update on how the beach combing is doing.
That sounds good.
Can't wait.
All right, next one. We're getting back to serious again. How long did it take for Carl to change some of his unhealthy habits?
Why does no one ask about your unhealthy habits?
Because I'm so awesome.
Nobody's ever like, Carl, what's it like dealing with her? And I'm sick of it. How long did it take me to change my unhealthy habits? Well, easy answer for anybody is, how long did it take you, whoever you are, to change your habits?
Yeah.
That gives you a great baseline. So the habits that I had created took roughly 40 years to build. Mm-hmm. So to unwind those habits is still a process, and might even be a process till the day I die. So the major ones, I think, and you can share from what you've seen, because they didn't ask me, but I'm speaking about it. The habits that I endeavored to change the quickest and the most drastically was the way that I think and the way that I communicate. Because I had a habit of thinking wrong and then communicating according to what that thought was. So one of the habits that I broke was isolation and silence, and then explosion.
Yeah.
And one of the habits I created was reflection, moderate and diffuse whatever I'm going to say by 80%, and then talk.
Yeah.
And it's been lovely.
Yeah.
And so that's a habit that I got to do that every time. So there are times where I've said to you, I'm sorry, can I restart this? And you're so great with allowing me to restart, because, hey, I reverted back to an old habit there. I don't do that. I don't talk like that. Let me start over. So
Yeah.
the habits that I think that I worked the hardest on was my mind.
Yep.
And
I
thinking
agree.
correctly is a habit, and my communication.
Yeah.
Because communicating is an intentional habit.
Well, and you're so good at communicating, but you've
Say more about that.
You're a great communicator, but you love conflict. Like, you love
do.
to get
I
into the
relish in
weeds
it.
of
Yeah.
weeds.
Oh, weeds works.
Whatever. You love to get into all of that. I do not necessarily. So, but you've done
Hold on, freeze. You don't necessarily. You hate conflict.
hate it.
You have lied blatantly sometimes just to not fight.
Correct.
Do you like this? I do. You're lying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I love to fight, you hate to fight. That's why God put us together. But yeah. Go ahead.
So I think you changing the way you communicate with me and with the kids, and I mean anyone that you talk to, you've changed a lot with that, and I notice it every day. And I think it's a massive win. And it's also I think it's one of the hardest things to do. I hate changing the way I think. You do it so well, and you challenge me all the time to change the way I think, because I have, I can definitely spiral down into a negative thing, and I can always find the negative.
Even your negative thoughts are kind of sweet. It's hard. It's hard to really crush. It's like, okay, it's time to.
Well,
not think
yeah,
that,
because
but
when
I
you
get
go negative, you really spiral.
We're gonna go there. You just get every opportunity on this pod. In case you're not back for a couple months, you just want to take shots. It's fun.
Might as well.
I get it.
Just keeping it real. But yeah, so I think you changing that has been amazing, and I think our kids have definitely noticed that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
So, habits. Here's what I can say, because that was obviously came from I would presume a wife, a woman.
Yeah.
You never gave me big destination due dates. And so we've had the privilege of helping couples in some tough spots. And one thing we've been able to say to people is, hey, it's going to be awesome if you prepare for the journey. So your husband, who's up for the work, up for the challenge, it took that guy decades to get like he was. So if you have a timetable in mind, yes, I'm talking about within reason. It's not like you can use this and weaponize, there's no timetable. No, there should be some sort of idea of when some stuff's going to change. But in general, think about how you feel. Do you like it when someone's breathing down your neck, seeing if you've changed? Like,
Right.
When's this going to change? When's this going to happen? You're awesome at going, are you on the journey? Are you doing your work? Okay. Even if I fail, you're like, I know this isn't going to be, I don't just arrive at a new person.
Yeah.
You become that person every single day.
Well, I
and
think
there has to be room for that, or it's a really hard journey.
I think it's a response too of like whatever your response is when you know, whatever habit or whatever we're talking about with people, but whatever habit is there that you're trying to change, depending on how long it takes for you to come back and realize like, oh, I need to do better with that, or like, I'm sorry for that, or apologizing, or being aware of the fact that you're trying to change. If a guy is like just doing his old stuff, being unhealthy and not realizing it or apologizing or whatever, that's a red flag. So yeah.
I would like you to mention one of the habits I've changed, which is talking to you more about.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and one of the other habits.
No, we're going to keep that. Look, we could cut it, y'all, to make it look like she prompted that, but I prompted it. No, I
forget things, which is great. It is important.
Here's why it's important, because you've said it means the most to you.
Absolutely.
So it's not self-serving. Like, look at my habit that I've changed. No, but you said, I've gotten in the habit of just talking to you so much. You accuse me of yapping, matter of fact.
Oh, yeah, I call it yapping now. It's like, are you still yapping? Like, what is happening?
I'm making up for lost time.
But we'll be like, yeah, because you've gone from living in your head.
Completely.
And like not telling me what's happening or where your day is or what happened in your day, or because you're so stressed or you're like in whatever it is and you've got this tunnel vision, to now it's like your communication is so good that sometimes I do accuse you of just yapping away. I'm like, are you still talking? Like I'm trying to like
which matches you, because you too are a yapper.
It's true.
And you're Australian, so you're using wrong grammar on top of it.
Great.
So at least me and my English strength, it makes my yapping more bearable.
Does it?
Yeah, it does.
Well, yeah, but I appreciate your communication, even the yapping parts.
Thanks. Where'd that come from? You just felt like saying something nice? Just talk about that habit? Great. Okay.
Next one. How do we navigate conflict?
Great question. And it kind of dovetails with what we've said previously. So if I think about conflict, I think honesty, directness, willing to give grace, tone.
Tone is massive.
Redos, nervous system changes. Those 6 things would be how we have tried to navigate really tough conflict. And I think honesty is the first one, because we don't do resentment and manipulation. And we have to fight for that, because it's easy to not say it, get mad, be manipulative, resent, and then 3 days later, there's something buried. This isn't the issue. The real issue is the thing you wouldn't talk about. So we're honest. Like, this is what I'm upset about. Sometimes that takes time to get there. Directness.
Yep.
Say exactly what you feel. And willingness to give grace. So I think even before you even get to the tone and the redos, we have done a good job of creating margin to be human. So we had like a 48-hour fight, or is it 24? 24-hour fight.
Maybe 48 on and off.
But I don't even use the word fight.
It wasn't a fight. It was just a tense. It was a tense couple of days.
And the big change for us that I noticed over the last day, as I was active in this conflict, was
you were the active one.
You were active. It was a constant.
Did you hear that tone?
We kept. Did you hear your tone? We kept on trying. And we started over 3 or 4 times. So that was huge. And I would suggest and invite other people to sometimes just go, you know what? Let me go start over. Let me go redo this.
Like moving your body. I noticed that the other day. So when I was a little pissed off at you about something that you had said to me, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the gym. And I just went to the gym, and I was there for 40 minutes, came back. Like, I sat in my car and I was like, oh, I actually feel fine now. Like, it's just so interesting that who knew that sometimes you just need to go to the gym or like go for a walk or whatever it is. And that can settle your nervous system and change the way that you walk back into that could be a heated situation. So that, I think, is really important. Instead of like just sitting in it and like going at each other, maybe take a break and go do something and say, hey, let's come back in an hour or whatever.
Yep.
So
I love that. I think for me as well, I would add, I don't want to win conflicts anymore. I don't. And I think you sense that, and you've never wanted to win. I think I want to create peace. So when I'm doing it wrong, I'm proving a point because I want to win. When I'm doing it right, I am trying to find a middle ground that makes sense for both of us, even if I've got to overlook some things I feel like I can stand on.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge deal.
Yeah, that's
this
massive.
isn't about who's right, who's wrong.
Sometimes I want to be right, though. That's my pride.
You rarely
Does
that lure
I don't
come
want to
up,
say sorry yet.
if ever. But I think, and we got to create space for each other to be normal. And one of those things is like when you're mad and I say I'm sorry, I can't expect you to act like it didn't just happen, and vice versa.
Yeah.
We both have done that from time to time, and we have to remember our rule. Because if you apologize, like, well, I'm sorry, and I said, one time I said, well, I'm still mad,
That was yesterday.
and you were
And I
not
was like,
happy
oh.
about it. Yeah, and I'm
And
like,
you
you
were
can't
like,
do that.
you can't do that.
That's a rule break.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to be mad for as long as I need to be mad, and the more you do that, the longer it's going to be. So let me get over it. And normally we crush that.
Yeah,
So
we
I
do.
think not expecting someone to look or feel a certain way because we've done our job. It's like, well, I did my job. I said I was sorry. You should be normal now. It's like, no, you have to give
Yeah.
that person their right to their process.
How do we stay connected during busy parenting seasons?
We put our kids second as much as we can. Easy answer. They're going to come second. So if there's ever a collision of margin and obligation, we choose to make sure. If we're doing our job, though, that doesn't have to happen a lot. Like if we put ourselves first and make sure that we're healthy, rarely do they have to suffer. But at the end of the day, if something's got to give, like last night was another good example. Like Romy's like, I want to do A, B, and C. It was late. I was like, nah, man, I told your mom that I would be in bed at this time. And he laid it on thick. Where does he get that manipulative
I don't know.
influence from? It's like,
Man.
he made me really feel like I was doing the wrong thing. And I'm like, you little... but I told him, I was like, I can't play another game with you. Because, you know what he said to me? You'll regret this someday.
He did. It was so good.
Oh, my gosh. I look back, I was like, well played, son. Well
He's
played. You
so
spoke right to my wound.
funny.
You spoke right to it. And I feel it.
He's
But
brilliant.
I won't regret it because I regret more your mom's cold shoulder if I show in this room, 30 minutes later. So I think busy parenting season, it takes so much more intentional planning.
Yeah.
That's all. And we've had a house filled with very active kids, and they're all three doing different things. So when we're not clicking, it's because that is running our household. We don't want our kids to run our house. We want to run our own house. So they're going to do what we say, when we say, the way we say it, and there's no middle ground. And we're not perfect with it, but that's how we've stayed connected. And we did an okay job even before all of our life change stuff, but now it's like it's a no-brainer. And again, if we do our job, they're not missing out.
Yeah, exactly. They get a lot of time with us.
Yeah, and because we've created it, it's beautiful. Because I'm never wondering if I should be with you when I'm with them.
Yeah.
Ever, and that's probably a big deal. One more. Let's do this one. Is Hillsong Church a cult? Well, I mean, the question is tossed to us a lot.
It is. It's so
Interesting.
weird.
Okay, so let's answer this a few ways. It's a great one to end on. We should do more Q&As because I feel like there's so much to dig into. Is Hillsong Church a cult? Easy answer is, of course, it's not a cult. And this is my perspective. And my perspective is probably different than anybody else's. But first of all, we got to talk about what is a cult. So everyone has their own definitions now. I define a cult as something that it makes it unable for someone to leave or disconnect without fear of death or ridicule or extraordinary manipulation, you name it. Like a cult is known for its welcoming arms in and closed doors when you want to get out.
Right.
It's a very, very layman's definition of cult. I think why our church, our former church, got hit with that so much is just because it's influential.
Yeah.
And our Taylor Swift fans, are they in a cult? They're way cultier than any church I've ever
Right.
seen. Beyonce's fans, way cultier. Is it? No. So I don't think, and we know we've been a part of that church our whole lives. So I can tell you for sure that never once has anybody ever been held.
No.
with an inability to leave whenever they want, I think that some of the leadership is heavy-handed. I think that's something everybody has learned, and it can be perceived in a way that can feel culty, and sometimes culty things. So the answer is no. It's not a cult, and there are definitely culty things that develop in churches that we have to be aware of, and sometimes it's unintentional. Sometimes it's funny. Like everyone used to say, everyone dresses the same way at this particular church, or everybody who listens to, Jay-Z wears their boots like this. Is it culty? Is it? I don't know. But I think in general that the heart of that question is probably more serious, and the answer is no. The heartbeat of Hillsong Church is always to point people to who Jesus is, and I stand by that. There's absolutely no equivocation needed. So it's not a cult. Do you think it's a cult?
Me? No.
Yeah. No.
I mean, I grew up in it since I was little, and I got out all right.
I think when people make cases like that, I think it devalues the real pain and the real scared elements of what real cults do. And Hillsong Church is just a messy church, and it just went through a really, really, really rough season of upheaval. But to call a church a cult, you got to show me where people are imprisoned. You got to show me where people are not allowed to leave, and I'm sure maybe someone has an experience with a church where it felt like that, and I'm not going to say that didn't happen, but I'm just answering the question. Is Hillsong Church a cult? It's absolutely not. Most likely your local church is not a cult. If you can't leave it and without people harassing you and hurting you and taking things from you, you probably should leave that church. But no, it's not a cult. Yeah. So I love it. I think Q&As, questions and responses, need to be happening all the time in many settings. And we are clear, these are not questions and answers. These are questions and responses from our perspective.
Our experiences.
Yeah, we'd love to hear more from you. So write in, call in, talk in. We're going to add an element that's going to be pretty cool coming up down the road, which I can't say more about. But it means the world to us. So we're really grateful that anybody, tunes in and checks out and leans in, and hope you enjoyed it. So we'll pick this up where we left off down the road. Laura Lentz.
Yes, love you. Thanks for having me. Lights off.
That's what I say.
Nope,
I
was
say
me
lights
today.
off. It's my call sign.
I'm the guest.
It's my call sign. Lights off.
Lights off.
Lights off.